Good afternoon, everyone. And we are now in the last chapter of the book of Exodus. We have come a long way since we first started. And at the end of this chapter, we have seen the last number of chapters describing first on Mount Sinai what God wanted Moses to make, which is the tabernacle, how it should be formed, what should go in, the kind of material, how it should be set up, and probably gave Moses a vision as to exactly how it should look like. Now, after coming down and having the golden calf episode, Moses continued on this assignment that God gave, and God raised up Bezalel and Oholiab. And Bezalel is noted as a leader with extraordinary skills. And he led the charge following exactly what Moses had said. And I'm sure Bezalel and Oholiab had the notion and the vision and shared that same vision that Moses had to construct. And so the people gave out of their free will all the materials, the cloth, the threads, the gold, the silver, the brass. And there was a group of people who were also highly skilled, and they were under the charge of Bezalel and Oholiab to teach them exactly what needs to be done. And I mentioned that all the details are left out because we don't know about it, but they did it. Now, when it comes to chapter 40, then it all wraps up, because in chapter 40, the Lord spoke to Moses saying, on the first day of the first month, you shall set up the tabernacle of the tent of the meeting. Now, this is important because this will give us an idea how long it took for all these things to happen at Mount Sinai. And so they are still at Sinai right now. Now, the first thing is that in the book of Exodus, we do not have that many occasions where God specifically mentions time and date. And so the first time that it was mentioned that was important in the Exodus was in Exodus chapter 12. And I just want to take us back into the two locations so that you have a better picture of what I'm trying to say to wrap up chapter 40. Now, in chapter 12, this is what we see. Very early in chapter 12, in verse 2, this month shall be your beginning of months. Now, this word beginning of months, if you are aware, in verse 2, this is the head of months of the year. And it's right here, the first month of this year to you. Now, this is important because this is the description of what do you mean by the head of months. This will be the beginning, the chief of all the months of the year. It is also known as the first month of the year. And so in chapter 12, out of 12 months, we know of the first month. And in this first month, the specific things do happen, right? On the 10th of the month, then you take the lamb, and then on the 14th day of the same month, you kill the lamb. Now that's the whole Passover sequence. So we know that this entire episode begins at the beginning of the month of Nisan, right? The month of Nisan, which is also called the month of Aviv, and that's the spring month. right? Sometime in late March, early April. The second time that a date is described is that after they left Egypt, not long after Exodus chapter 12, because that would have been the Passover on the 14th of the month. They killed the Passover. On the 15th, remember, the day starts in the evening. They have the meal, and after that meal, right, the next day, they left Egypt. Now, that was the idea of the first month. Now, in chapter 19, it says, in the third month, after the children of Israel had gone out of the land of Egypt, on the same day, they came to the wilderness of Sinai, and they camped there before the mountain. So understand, this is Mount Sinai, or Mount Sinai, as we call it. On that same day would be the 15th of the month. And we see that it is in the third month. So the 15th day of the third month, basically. Now, that's all that we ever see in the book of Exodus. Now we come back to chapter 40. It is now on the first day of the first month that God is telling him to do this, which means that we have in the first month and then the third month, and then it crosses the 12th month, back on the first month again. And so the first month is actually the next year after they left Egypt. So we do know that if that is the case, on the 15th of the first month, they arrive there. On the 15th of the third month, they arrive at Mount Sinai. And then on the, and while they're here, they are making the tabernacle. And God says on the first of the month, they should do this. First day of the first month, you shall set up the tabernacle of the 10th of meeting. And so that's the picture we have. Now, after they arrive at Mount Sinai, 40 days up in the and on top of Mount Sinai, came back down, they had the golden calf episode, 3,000 died, and then they started making the tabernacle. And so all in all, they probably have a good 8 months, right? A good 8 months. And they finished the job. And so this is what I wanted you to know, is that in this first 2 verses, it's important. And look at this verse 2. Verse 2 tells us a couple of things, and I want to give it to you in the Hebrew so that you understand. The word tabernacle is mishkan. The word tent is ohel. The word appointment is moed. The 3 words are very key. All right. So when you talk about the mishkan, it is you could call it the entirety of the tabernacle. All the perimeter fencing and everything that's inside, especially the tent itself. So the tent is within the entire tabernacle framework. And the tent of meeting is exactly where God will meet Israel and where God would meet Moses. That's inside that tent. And so that's the whole picture that God is saying, that I will now dwell in the midst of you. And the tabernacle symbolizes the presence of God, and in some physical way, God's presence by the cloud that will come on above and on top of the tabernacle over the tent of meeting will demonstrate God's presence among them. Now, this is the conclusion of Exodus chapter 40, that God now wants Moses to set it up And it's always on New Year's Day, isn't it? So you could see this. This is on the first day of the first month. This is the new year. And God starts the new year by setting up the tabernacle. And so you shall put it in the ark of the testimony and partition off the ark with the veil. So the ark of the testimony will be inside the tabernacle of meeting. It will be in what they call the most holy place, or commonly called the Holy of Holies. Then it is said to be partitioned off. The idea of partition off is to block off. And so the Holy of Holies is a separate place, fenced in, so to speak, with the ark inside, and there would be a veil, a curtain. You shall bring in the table and the arrangement of things to be set in order. What table? The table of showbread. And understand, the table of showbread are 12 loaves of bread that represents the 12 tribes of Israel. And they're going to be arranged in order. And then there will be a menorah, the lampstand, and then light up the lamps. And you shall also set the altar of gold for the incense, that would be the table of incense, before the ark of the testimony, and put up the screen for the door of the tabernacle. Now understand, the word door is entrance. And as usual, I urge all of us, do not jump the conclusion that every time you read the English word, that it means the modern day understanding. That is a screen, a veil, a curtain. Doors those days are not made of wood. So it is just a flat, and that represents the entrance into the tabernacle. Verse 6, you shall set the altar of the burnt offering before the door of the tabernacle of the tent of meeting. So outside the tabernacle or the door would be the altar. And then there will be the wash basin, right? Between the tabernacle and the altar. So what it means is, when you come out of the tabernacle at the entrance, the first thing you see would be the laver and then the altar. Then you shall set up the court all round, and that would be the open space, the open plaza. And you have the boards all round the tabernacle complex. And then the walls of the tabernacle are actually curtains. So you hang up the screen at the court gate. So the court front door or the entrance is also a screen. Now, the setting up of the place requires the anointing oil. Now, every time you have the anointing oil in verse 9, that would be it would be usually olive oil. So you would rub the tabernacle and all that is in it. So symbolically, the rubbing of the oil makes it special. The word halo is to make holy or make special. And so all the utensils, the word utensils here are the tools, the kali, all of them are to be anointed. Anointed means to smear, to rub. How else do you want to call it? To smear, to rub. Everything. Right? And it will be special. You rub the altar, all the utensils, and you make it holy. It will be most holy, and you should anoint the laver and then set it apart. What do you mean to consecrate? To be holy, to anoint, right? Be holy. All of these actions is a ritual. right? It's a ritual. And it is God's ritual. And that symbolizes that everything the oil touches is made special for God's use. And now, we may not appreciate it today, but people in those days, this is a symbolic gesture that shows that all of these utensils and the entire tabernacle, everything that's in it, are made holy or called consecrated because of what God said. And when they did it exactly as what God said, ritually speaking, they are now considered dedicated for God. God's tabernacle, God's rules. Now you shall bring Aaron and his sons to the door of the tabernacle of the meeting, wash them with water. See, water is a very good cleansing solvent, right? They put on the holy garments on Aaron, anoint him and consecrate him so that you rub oil on him, that he may minister to me as priest. Now understand this. In verse 13, the word minister to me means to minister to me as priest is actually one word, two words actually. He may minister to me as priest. This basically means Kihan Li. Kihan Li means this. He may serve or act as priest to me. That is how it's translated. So it says minister to me as priest would be the English equivalent, but the whole idea here is it is a play on one word, which is Kohen, which is priest. Now, priest is basically to act as a servant of God, to do exactly what needs to be done as all the rituals are described. Now, there are priests for different religions and different faiths, right? And so if it was an idol or a pagan worship, they have priests too. Now, in this case, for God, they are also priests, but it was God who decides who become priests. For other religions, like the pagan religions, then the people decide who becomes priests. Now, in a situation where Jehovah is God and he's the true and living God, it is only befitting that the true and living God is the one that decides who become priests. And now it's always Aaron and his sons. And then going down the line, it will be always his sons' sons. And so God has decided, and you shall bring his sons and clothe them with tunics, anoint them as you anoint their father, that they may minister to me as priests. First, Aaron as high priest, the sons would be just general priests, right? For their anointing, there will be an everlasting priesthood throughout their generations. This basically tells us that the descendants of Aaron will all be priests. And they are all from the tribe of Levi, right? Of Levi. So that is exactly what God is telling Moses to do. So in verse 16, the narrative says Moses did exactly according to God's command. He did it. And so this whole emphasis is that from chapter 25 onwards, you see the instructions of God are carried out to its minute detail. Now, in verse 17, we have another date. In the first month of the second year. Now, how do you define second year? 1 year and then second year. And with this, we know that on the 15th of the first month, they left. And then on the 15th of the third month, they arrived at Mount Sinai. On the first of the first month, they set this up. And then on the first, and this is basically that whole first month of the second year, because this can be considered the second year they left Egypt, right? And the first year counting the very year they left. On the first day of the month, the tabernacle was raised up. Moses raised up the tabernacle and did everything, right? Fastened the sockets, set up its boards, put in its bars, raised up the pillars, spread out the tent over the tabernacle, and put the covering of the tent on top of it. Remember the 4 layers as the Lord had commanded Moses. He took the testimony and put it into the ark, inserted the poles, and put the mercy seat to cover the ark. He brought the ark into the tabernacle, hung the veil of the covering, partition off the ark of the testimony as God had commanded. I think the important phrase in this chapter is also this: as the Lord had commanded. As the Lord had commanded. Because that's the repetitive phrase. And then he did with the table of showbread, and it'll be on the north side of the tabernacle, outside the veil. And then he set the bread before the Lord. Remember, the bread is the showbread. How many pieces? 12 pieces, representing the 12 tribes. And it has always to be there before God, but outside the veil, as the Lord had commanded. And then he put the lampstand of the tabernacle across from the table on the south side of the tabernacle. So one would be facing north and one would be facing south. And he light up the lamps, and then the inside of the sanctuary would be bright. Then he put the gold altar of the tabernacle of meeting in front of the veil. So basically what you have found is this. You have the tabernacle of meeting. Then you have the veil. And then you have the ark. All right. The ark. Here is the table. Here is the showbread. And here would be your menorah. And this would be north, south, west, and east. And here you have a curtain. And that's basically what is describing the inside of the tabernacle. And then he burned sweet incense as the Lord commanded. He hung up the screen at the door. All right. Now in 29, it says this. He put the altar of burnt offering before the door of the tabernacle. Now the word before is not there, but it's implied that it would be outside the door of the tabernacle of the tent of meeting. And he offered on it the burnt offering and the grain offering, just as the Lord had commanded. Now let me just give you these words. In verse 29, it would be important for us to realize that the word burnt offering is ha'olah, the burnt offering. The grain offering would be harmincha. Harmincha. And that's what it means. These are, grain offering would be a tribute, a present to God. Burnt offering is usually an animal that is killed and it is burnt so that the aroma raises up to God. So olah is basically this word olah, ha'olah, the burnt offering, basically means the sweet smell and aroma of the fat of the animal rises up to the heavens, as the Lord had commanded. He set the laver, which is a wash basin, between the tabernacle and the altar, put water for washing. Moses, Aaron, and his sons would wash their hands, their feet with water from it. Now, just another aspect. So the question someone would ask is, yes, they wash their hands and feet. How far up the hand? Is it past the elbow, before the elbow, just at the wrist? Does the feet means at the toes, the bottom? Does it hit the ankle? Would it be higher than the ankle at the shin? Or would it be washing all the way up to the knee? Now, we don't have any of those descriptions. And those are what we would call oral traditions, right? Or they call oral Torah. So I'm just giving us an idea where some of these information might come from, because if you were a Jew or you were part of the Israelites, how would you know how to wash your hands? How would you know how to wash your feet? Right? Hands and feet. How far of the feet? How much of the feet? How much of your hands? Do you wash it in between of your fingers, the fingernails? All of these things are important details if you are one of the Israelites keeping it. But since we're not, right? We are just now studying the text. So we are looking back and I suppose they do have that information. Otherwise, they won't be able to follow it. That's the point I'm trying to make. Would it be important to us? Absolutely not. So whenever they went into the tabernacle of meeting and then they came near the altar, they washed as the Lord had commanded. So God wants them to wash. First, oil anointed. 2, wash, to be clean. Right? And then they raised up the cord all around the tabernacle and the altar and hung up the screen at the gate. And now Moses finished the work. Now, verse 33 has a very interesting word, right? This word is kala. Now, this is not the Malay word, kala. This is the Hebrew word, kala. Kala means to complete. Kala also means to be at an end. So the work has come to an end. It also means accomplished, because the work has been successful and done. Right? So it is a broad aspect, and all these words would mean something, right? One of the words that I didn't put up is that it also does mean destroy. That it's completely destroyed. No, but in this case, this would be the positive side of the word kala, and it actually means Moses had finished the work, completed and set up the tabernacle. Now that the tabernacle has been set up, then the cloud covered the tabernacle of the meeting, and the glory of the Lord filled the tabernacle. This is something we need to understand just a little bit. First of all, the idea of cover. This is kasa. And kasa actually means to cover, to hide, to conceal, or to clothe. And so something has come upon the tabernacle of meeting. In verse 34, the tabernacle of meeting is called the, I don't know why they keep changing this word. This is actually the Ohel Moed. All right. It's not Mishkan. So one of the practical problems that we have is that whenever you read the English word tabernacle, it could mean Mishkan or it could mean Ohel. In this case, it means Ohel. This means the tent of meeting. And I had wished that the translators would be consistent with that. Now, the glory of the Lord, the glory means weight. The importance. I think it also should give us the idea of the splendor. Right? The splendor. Now, how do you view all this now? All of these is actually visible. And that's the other thing I have always mentioned to you, that these are very visible. So the cloud and the glory of Jehovah, and then the word filled the tabernacle, the word filled here is male. Male actually means be full. It's everywhere, right? Basically, it's everywhere. And now there is another word, tabernacle. This is Mishkan. And so you want to ask yourself, why does the translator translate this as tabernacle and this as tabernacle? But they're two different Hebrew words, and I can't answer you on that. So let's come back to the word cloud. Cloud is a very simple term. It's anan. Cloud really is, how should we say? You could actually consider this as a thick smoke, a thick fog, some form of a covering, and it is dark. Why is it dark? Because there is no light. It is thick. That's basically what I was trying to say. It's thick and it is dark because you can't see through it. And so this represents or symbolizes the presence of God. And it descends on the entire Mishkan. And so now we have to understand the word "and" is making this an A and a B. All right. So the tabernacle of meeting is an equivalent to the Mishkan. The cloud that covered the tabernacle is the glory that filled the tabernacle. You see this? An A and a B. And so what do we see is that the glory or the splendor is not something that's brilliant, but it is something that is visible and is awesome, and it is, well, somewhat scary, I would say, and that it is descending. So you could see something descend, very smoky, like a cloud. It may not be smoke, right? It's something like a thick fog that just descends and you can't see it. Very much like in Exodus chapter 19, when the people saw God on the mountain. Now, what did they see? They see thick clouds, and then they saw lightning and thunder and God speaking. That is what is the splendor or glory of God. And that is what it means by filling. So you can literally see it covering the entire place. And so it's like, in modern day movies, when you go into something that is extraordinary, like a picture of heaven, it's all smoke, it's all thick, and you can't see through it. That is what it means. that is the picture, and it's descended over the tabernacle. It's covered everything that's in there. And Moses was not able to enter the tabernacle of the meeting. Again, this verse in 35, in 35, it is the Ohel, and that means tent of Moed, because the cloud rested above it and the glory of the Lord filled the tabernacle. Now again, you would see this as an A and a B. The cloud rested on it. The glory of the Lord filled the tabernacle. It, right, is the tabernacle. And thereby this and this is an A and a B. So the cloud rested on it. And this is a repeat of verse 34, right? The tabernacle here would be Mishkan. So it's describing it, verse 34, in a different way, right? It's a different way. Verse 36, and whenever the cloud was taken up from above the tabernacle. Now, above the tabernacle, the word here would literally means on top of the tabernacle, which means that the people can see where's the top. And whenever the cloud, and the word taken up is to be brought up. Who brings it up? Obviously God, right? And is brought up above the tabernacle. The children of Israel would go onward in all their journeys. Now understand, the word journey actually means nasa. Nasa literally means you pull up the pegs, right? Pull up pegs. So you wrap up your tent, pull up the pegs, and then the sons of Israel, Bnei Israel, would go forward. Now this would go onward in all their journeys. Literally is one word here, right? Is to pull up their tent pegs, and it implies that they are going to move away. It's a very interesting thing, but all these words are only in one Hebrew word, Yis'u, right? And it's a simple word, but it's translated sometimes in English in a more complicated way. But that's the picture you get. When they pull up the 10 pegs, they're supposed to move on a journey. Verse 37, but if the cloud was not taken up, then what do? They did not journey until the day it was taken up. Now understand this. Did not journey, did not pull up pegs until the day that it is brought up. Now it's always up. Notice the cloud doesn't go sideways. It is described as, well, let me just try to draw us this picture here. If this was the tabernacle, this is the tabernacle, and this is the tabernacle, and here's the door of the tabernacle, which means that there have been clouds all over. The smoke is there. And this is an awesome sight. So if you had stood here and you saw this, it would be an awesome sight. That and the cloud would only be there. So you can really know that someone supernatural is there, that God's presence is there. And so when it rises up, all right, when it rises up, that's the time where you know it's time to go. That's the whole picture. That's a whole picture. For the cloud of the Lord was above the tabernacle by day, and fire was over it by night, and in the sight of all the house of Israel throughout their journey. Now, this is the last piece of information in the book of Exodus. The cloud of the Lord was above the tabernacle by day. Now, the tabernacle by day means it's not moving. So in the day, it is the cloud, and so it is all covered. Now, cloud would mean thick cloud. Now, cloud has no color. Now, this is not smoke in that sense. So generally, you might think, no, if it's white, well, at least cloud up in the sky is white. And so when it descends on the tabernacle, it's thick. It's very mysterious, right? It gives you that mysterious aura. And then at night, you can't see. And so there is a fire over it by night. Now, the word fire is ash, right? Fire is ash. And cloud is anan. And so you have both representative of the picture of God. The fire of God and the cloud of the Lord would be over it. Now in verse 38, the idea of over it would be overshadowing it, and thereby then you could see the tabernacle. That's quite interesting. And so the picture of cloud and fire is a symbol of the presence of God. Now, the final thing I want to show you is this. In the sight of all the people. What does that mean? It means in the eyes. It's visual. God's presence is real, visible, and present. What does that mean? It means that God's presence is not a figment of imagination. God's presence is not that, no, Moses say, oh, trust me, God is here. God's presence is, Moses doesn't have to say anything. God doesn't need Moses to defend. If somebody say, no, Moses, God is not there. Well, everyone can see it, that God is with Israel. The cloud of the Lord, right? The cloud of the Lord by day. The fire of the Lord by night. In the eyes of all the house of Israel throughout their journeys. And that would be in the wilderness. Whenever that happens, they cannot ignore the fact that God is with them. But the sad part is, although they could see God, eventually in the book of Numbers, they fail God yet again. And when we get to the book of Numbers in the next week, you would find that the journeys in the wilderness is important because God is teaching them a lot of things ahead of time. And so I leave this with you, chapter 40 of the book of Exodus, that God is real. God shows himself. God doesn't need Moses to defend God. God doesn't tell Moses to explain to them, though you can't see me, I'm somewhere there. They don't have the concept that, no, God is in your heart. God is in your midst is the concept. And so literally, they can actually experience God in a very real way. And as a nutshell, we come to the close. Moses did exactly everything God said. And so this last picture here from verses 34 to 38 basically tells us that God is there literally showing himself to Israel. Very similar to Exodus chapter 19. And so Mount Sinai is now movable. The mountain of God is now in the form of the tabernacle of the tent of meeting, the Mishkan Ohel Moed. And it will move with the Israelites all the way into the promised land and to a place where God has appointed initially at Shiloh, and then when Solomon built the house of God, it would be in Jerusalem. And so that whole history of God with Israel is to represent something tangible, that it is not in the heart concept, but they could literally see, feel, touch, and experience. And it says the glory of God right here, and that would be the cloud, right? And with this, we come to the close of chapter 40 of the book of Exodus.